Welcome to a WMAS original expose. In 1975, Steven Tyler convinced the parents of 14-year-old groupie Julia Holcomb to sign over guardianship to him so he could live with her in Boston. Tyler, who was 27 at the time, dated and did drugs with Holcomb for 3 years before they eventually broke up after an unplanned pregnancy, which resulted in an abortion. Tyler returned Julia to her parents at the age of 17. Julia is mentioned in the book Walk This Way as Diane Hall to conceal her identity. Here's a clip of Julia Holcomb explaining some of the trauma she had to experience under Steven Tyler.
I met Steven when I was 16 years old at a concert. We began a relationship that lasted about 3 years. I was underage, and he became my legal guardian. I lived with him in Boston, and I traveled with him on tour. After we had been together for some months, he asked me if I was open to the idea of having a family, a child, and I was on the birth control pill at the time, but he said he wanted a family, and he wondered if I wanted a child. I said, yes, I did. I cared so much for him, and I loved children, so I told him absolutely I wanted a child. I couldn't wait to tell him, and he also seemed happy when I first told him that I was pregnant. We told his parents about our decision to get married, that I was expecting a baby, and their reaction was, not surprisingly, they expressed concern. I was very young and immature. Steven asked his grandmother if he could give me her wedding ring to get married with, and she declined. She felt that if we divorced, the ring would leave the family. We returned to Boston, and where we had our apartment, and we were just kind of in limbo. I didn't really know how it was all going to work out. I just thought, well, I'll have the baby and we'll just live together. No education. I dropped out of high school. I didn't have a driver's license. I couldn't go anywhere. I had no money of my own, and I had had no prenatal care. So I was in a difficult position. He would call in the evening to check on me, but after about 2 weeks, the food in the apartment was running low, and I remember telling him, I need to go grocery shopping. And he said, well, I'll send someone over tomorrow. He was going to send Ray over, who was a former band member and had helped with the band when they traveled. He said, I'll send Ray over. He'll take you grocery shopping tomorrow. So I was so excited because I had been cooped up in that apartment for 2 weeks, and I was going to get out of the house. I sat there by the window just waiting for Ray to come. And he arrived, I let him in. And I don't remember what happened after that, but I woke up in a fire. Ray was gone, and the apartment was on fire. There was smoke everywhere. I could not see anything but smoke. I knew that I had to get out of there quickly because I couldn't breathe. I stood up and I tripped on the table. I fell to the floor, and the smoke was less dense on the floor, and I remembered some commercials that I had seen on TV, public service announcements about how to survive a fire, and it said, stay down on the floor because you can breathe better. I made my way to the front door, and it was locked. There were 3 locks on that door. All 3 of them were locked, and the bar lock was jammed. And I just knew I had to immediately find another exit. So I made my way to the back stairway that led down into the kitchen area where there was another outside exit. But when I got to the stairs, there was flames and smoke coming up the stairs. And when I reached out to grab the railing, it was so hot that I burned my hand on it. And I knew I was trapped. There was no way out of that house, that apartment. But I remembered in those commercials it said, if you're trapped in a fire, find a fireplace. And there was a clean, empty fireplace in our bedroom. I crawled into the fireplace. The flue was open. I lay there. On the very bottom of the floor there was air, and I could see smoke just churning and billowing up the fireplace flue, and I was about to fall unconscious. I knew that I was going to die. When I woke up in the hospital, I had smoke inhalation, and the doctors had thought I wouldn't survive because they had checked my oxygen levels and they were very low. They said if I lived, I would have brain damage. I was so young. I just really gave in at that point, and that was where the worst ordeal began. Because I was so far along, I underwent a late-term abortion to kill my baby. And that was a saline abortion. So they took me into another room. I had to labor so that my baby's dead body could be delivered or born. I was in labor for many hours, and Stephen sat beside me, snorting cocaine on the table beside my bed. At one point, he offered me cocaine, and I remember just turning away from him and just so sad and grieved inside. The baby was delivered, and the nurse immediately took my baby away, and I did not see what happened. Later, when we were in New Hampshire, Stephen told me that my baby was born alive and that it was a little boy.
It was a different time. Sex was treated differently back then, was the argument commonly used to justify the transgressions perpetrated by the heroes like Elvis Presley, Bill Wyman, Jimmy Page, and Iggy Pop. All these men and many more have acknowledged engaging in romantic relationships with women well under the age of 18, when they themselves were in their 20s, 30s, or even 40s. Wyman was 47 years old when he began dating a 13-year-old girl, of course, with the approval of her mother. Wyman's former band, the Rolling Stones, later flaunted their dalliances with underage groupies on merchandise sold during their 1994 Voodoo Lounge tour. More contemporary rock stars like Anthony Kiedis of the Red Hot Chili Peppers also bragged about committing statutory rape with no repercussions. In his 2005 autobiography, Scar Tissue, Kiedis recounts his sexual relationship with a 14-year-old Catholic schoolgirl. Kiedis was 23 years old at the time, and after learning her age, he proceeded to have sex with her again. He writes, "The next day we drove to Baton Rouge, and of course she came with us. After we got off stage, she came up to me and said, 'I have something to tell you. My father's the chief of police, and the entire state of Louisiana is looking for me because I've gone missing. And oh, besides that, I'm only 14. I wasn't incredibly scared because in my somewhat deluded mind, I knew if she told the chief of police she was in love with me, he wasn't going to have me taken out to a field and shot. But I did want to get her the hell back home right away. So we had sex one more time.' Their relationship inspired the Red Hot Chili Peppers' 1985 song Catholic Schoolgirls Rule, which has been played live by the band as recently as 2007. Following this public admission in the Scar Tissue, Kiedis and his band have continued to enjoy rock star status. They've won Grammys, headlined in festivals, and even made a cameo at the Super Bowl. In 2012, the Red Hot Chili Peppers were enshrined in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Many people don't know that Ted Nugent adopted a young underage girl at one time who legally became his daughter. However, despite him being over 30 years old and her his legally adopted daughter, he used their relationship and admits to having sex with her. Yes, NRA director Ted Nugent admits that he's a pedophile and adopted a girl to be a predator. Worse, he even wrote a song about his love for underage girls as young as 12 and 13. And once, former member of the band Hole, superstar Courtney Love, explained that she gave Ted Nugent oral sex when she was only 12 years old. Here's a clip of Courtney Love telling her story on The Howard Stern Show.
back then in the like
How old were
50s.
you? No, how old were you when you gave Ted Nugent the sex?
Really young.
12?
I didn't have breasts yet.
You're kidding.
No.
Oh, that's sick.
It's sick.
How old were you?
The one he said
11?
before. No, the one he said.
12
and a half.
You were 12 and a half?
Yeah, but I mean, like that, I had a disgusting, I was in juvenile hall.
It is true. Ted Nugent was 32 years old when he released the song Jailbait. Here's a taste of the lyrics written by him. Well, I don't care if you're just 13. You look too good to be true. I just know that you've probably clean. Jailbait, you look fine, fine, fine. It's quite all right. I asked your mama. Wait a minute, officer. Don't put those handcuffs on me. Put them on her, and I'll share her with you. The album's next track is titled, I Am a Predator. It even gets worse. In a VH1 documentary, Ted Nugent admits he's a serial pedophile. He claimed to have had several relationships with underage young girls and seems to brag about gaining their parents' approval and possibly trading money for them too. But yet he claims that he didn't adopt any of them, but he is addicted to underage girls. Here's a clip of Pele Massa. She was his 17-year-old Hawaiian victim. Listen to her explain her story.
Soon after his divorce, Ted found a new love, a young girl from Hawaii named Pele Massa.
She was like a dream, a fantasy, exotic dream of mine to meet her.
Ted was 30 years old, Pele just 17.
I was underage, and even back in the wild 70s, it just really wasn't a terribly appropriate situation in most people's eyes. And now it would be criminal.
Ted admits to a number of liaisons with underage girls, and while it may have raised eyebrows, it never raised the interest of local authorities. Ted charmed the girls' parents right along with his teenage lovers. And in the case of Pele, her mother signed papers making Ted her legal guardian.
I got the stamp of approval of their parents because they figured better Ted Nugent than some drug-infested punk in high school.
Ted Nugent, Steven Tyler, Anthony Kiedis, Bill Wyman aren't the only rock stars of their time to have addictions to underage girls. Elvis Presley seemed to find teenage girls fascinating. He was 24 years old when he married his bride, Priscilla Presley, when she was 14 years old. Watch Priscilla Presley explain their relationship when she was only a 14-year-old child. Here's a quote from his friend and former member of his entourage, Lamar Fike. He was fascinated with young girls, and it scared the hell out of us.
You write in your book, you're 14. Elvis would take me into his bedroom, and then we would kiss long, deep, passionate kisses, and his caresses would leave me weak with desire.
Yeah?
When you had trouble getting up for classes, Elvis gave you Dexedrine. Mm-hmm. First time you'd seen pills.
I didn't know what was going on as far as, pills or what they were, sleeping pills. I mean, he gave them to me to be helpful.
What do you think attracted a 24-year-old star to a 14-year-old inexperienced? Or am I telling you just as I say that? Is that what attracted him to you?
The inexperience, yes. I think Elvis had been around Hollywood already. He had already seen Hollywood, quote-unquote, starlets. So I think in his own mind, he thought, well, I'll just be with someone and teach her as it comes.
And during the day, you got up and...
Heartthrob pop singer Elvis Presley is a real-life bridegroom at last. 8 years ago, when he was a soldier in Germany, he met Priscilla Beaulieu, daughter of a U.S. lieutenant colonel who was also serving out there. As she was then only 14, they had to wait a bit. Now, who could say who was the luckier, the pelvis or pretty Priscilla? The millionaire film star singer, in bride choosing as in everything else, a terrific success.
Elvis was 24, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did your parents allow a 14-year-old teenager baby to be with this then superstar of
It was not easy on my parents. You know, first of all, it was just an innocent meeting. And of course, you know, I was excited and I was reluctant because I didn't think they'd ever let me go. But it was just a one-time opportunity. That's all they thought it would be. I never expected him to ask me back. They never expected him to ask me back.
But Elvis did ask you back, and you saw him again and again. And you would get home very late at night and be exhausted the next day when you had to go to school. Mm-hmm. And your parents let you go again and again.
It was a very protective relationship from the very beginning. I don't know what it was about him, but he kind of took me under his arm and nourished me in many ways.
You write in your book, you're 14.